tell you, this library is phenomenal. Okay, they do some incredible work, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here this evening. So good evening, everyone. Good evening. Buenos noches. Bonjour. Bon dia. Buongiorno. Ni hao. Memenjes. Dobre utro. Namaste. Sawadi. Chawem. Manga nangu manga. Como ye? Sopa wanang sung. Assalamu alaikum. Privet. Guten Tag. Kalimera. As they say in Hebrew, Shalom. The reason why I start off with all those different languages is out of respect to the various cultures that live in southeastern Connecticut, recognizing and acknowledging all the different cultures in southeastern Connecticut as well that live here. Now, there are approximately 3.5 million people that live in the state of Connecticut, and we have 169 towns. And out of 169 towns, 153 towns are predominantly white, which means we typically don't come in contact with each other. And there are 16 towns where people of color are concentrated in the state of Connecticut. Connecticut is the 5th most segregated state in the nation. But tonight, we're going to really shed light on navigating, how do black men navigate in these spaces? Because this incredible book, Don't Cry for Me, by Dr. Daniel Black. Because this book is about breaking generational silence and exploring that inner self of what's going on when you navigate in these different spaces that we have to, as black men, have to navigate on a daily basis. So before I begin, Ann, you have the clicker here? Yeah? I would like to shed light on and acknowledge some black profound leaders. Because this book goes through different generations, different decades, and it sheds light on different decades. First person I would like to acknowledge tonight is Ruby Bridges. Ruby Bridges is still alive and breathing and doing some incredible work still. She's 70 years old. And Ruby Bridges, in this picture in 1960, she was only 6 years old. Now imagine, every single day, and some of us in this room who are a little more seasoned, right? We know what it was like when Ruby Bridges, she was being escorted by those U.S. Marshals every single day for an entire year. And now imagine people are saying things to her, racial slurs, but every day, she's marching every single day, just walking to school. And then for an entire year, she was not allowed to use the cafeteria. She was not allowed because people were afraid she was going to be poisoned. But one thing about when I look at this picture, I realize even through the times that we're in now, Ruby Bridges, at 6 years old, she realized things were a lot bigger than her. The mission was bigger than she was. So a lot of times when we feel like we're going through a lot, we have to always look back to the pioneers who were the trailblazers, who paved the way for us to be where we are today. Another person I want to acknowledge is George Dawson. George Dawson wrote this book when he was 98 years old. Now, he went his entire life writing his name with an X. And in the book, Dr. Daniel Black, he talks about his grandparents, right, and his grandfather being a sharecropper. George Dawson was also a sharecropper, not having access to education, but one thing, he never quit. He always had a passion, desire to want to move forward. And then he wrote this book, and he said, life is so good, because now he had the freedom, he was liberated to write and express his thoughts. And that's something that no one can ever take away from you. He's someone I wanted to acknowledge tonight as well, when we dig deep into Dr. Daniel Black's book. Another person I wanted to acknowledge is Fannie Lou Hamer, the great Fannie Lou Hamer. And she would always say, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is a woman that was a sharecropper who people attacked her. She was shot at. Police officers, sheriff, everyone wanted to silence her in the state of Mississippi, especially the white supremacists at that time. But one thing about Fannie Lou Hamer was she continued to speak out, and she continued to make sure people were able to register to vote in her community. She never ever allowed anyone to prevent her or stop her from moving forward. So I want to definitely acknowledge Miss Fannie Lou Hamer this evening as well. And the last person I want to acknowledge is Mr. Walter White. Mr. Walter White is an unsung hero. If you look at him right there, you'll think right away, gotta be a white man there, dude. Right? Some people would say that right away. But Mr. Walter White was, according to the Constitution, if you had 1/8 drop of black blood, you were black. And Mr. Walter White was a black man who used his white passing as a way to record lynchings in America. And he's one of those people that many people never even discuss, because you have black people who are white passing, and they use their white passing in order to navigate and record information as well. And Walter White, so all the lynchings that we have now, the recording from 1918 to 1955, came from Walter White when he would go into a white mob, an angry white mob, and they either lynch someone or burn someone. He would record it and then bring it back to New York, and they would document what happened. And he was able to go in there before anyone could detect that he was a black man. So a very interesting story. Hopefully one day they do a movie or something on Mr. Walter White as well. So before I begin this awesome, incredible panel tonight, I would like to have Ms. Watson Joseph. Mr. Watson Joseph is going to come up here, and he's going to shed a little bit of light on what is it like for him to be a black man in America. And he'll speak for roughly around 3 to 5 minutes. Mr. Watson Joseph, let's give him a round of applause.
How's everyone doing tonight? First of all, you all look beautiful. You all look great. Thank you so much for coming here. Man, Book, I can't thank you enough for actually putting me in position every time, man. Thank you so much for all the opportunity. Shout out to my beautiful girlfriend. One of my best friends, Eric, over here. He came to show us some love tonight. Shout out to you for even showing up for your success as well, too, just to hear this information. Man, I don't know, being a black man in America has been truly a blessing for me, honestly. So, you know, and it's been a blessing for me because of great people like that Booker actually showed on the screen today. So without the people that actually, you know, like paved the way for me to be the man that I am today, I don't know where I would be. So, you know, I don't take that for granted. I'm originally from Haiti. I came to America when I was 7 years old. So coming to America, I speak absolutely no English, and, you know, just looking at everybody that looks totally different from me, it was just like a whole different blur for me. So, you know, just learning how to even speak the language, learning how to even write, talk, going in different spaces, it was so different for me. So, you know, it was more so like everyone that I encountered was, you know, I felt like was against me in a way, because I'm not used to seeing so many different other cultures in one place. So, you know, I had to realize that, you know what, I was meant to be here. And, you know, having the education that I have today was due to people that actually believed in me, and due to people that actually could, you know, always take me as like under their wing and show me the ropes. So without the people that, you know, that I have in my life today, I wouldn't be the man that I am today, especially in the city of New London. I can't thank the city of New London enough. So, you know, being in New London, you know, there was so much other things that was happening as well, too. So growing up here wasn't the easiest, because you're surrounded by so much negativity, but you're also surrounded around so much positivity as well. So I had to make a decision early on to say that I wanted to go in the route that was going to be beneficial for me moving forward. And, you know, that route was, you know, seeing college in my future. You know, coming all the way from Haiti, I saw how hard my father had to work. I saw what he had to do to provide. I saw what he had to do to make sure that we stayed happy. I saw the man that kept his tears inside of him to say that, yo, I'm gonna do what I have to do because I have my kids here and they are my motivators. They are the reason why I am actually doing this. You know, my father started working here for $7 an hour with 5 kids. You can't really take care of 5 kids with $7 an hour, right? So it had to take me to actually work in the same place as my father actually when I was 19 years old. I worked at Mohegan Sun at Bobby's Burger Palace while I was going to college. And, that was where I met Miss Mariana actually. And, it was just like seeing my dad, seeing the hard work that he did, it just lit a fire up inside of me to say that, yo, there's no way. There's just, I break it down right now, but there's just, every time I'm sharing this story, it's like, yo, there's no way I could sit here and say that, yo, I'm here today without my father's grit, without the man that he is today to stay strong, to be the man that he is, navigating through everything. And, in the system, it's more so like, we don't really get the fair chance, but seeing what the sacrifices that everybody had to make in order for us to be where we at today, that's really what moves me. And today I can truly say I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college. I'm the first person, right? Thank you. I'm the first person to say that I started a successful business as well too. And my business, We Cultured, is basically, just inspiring others to feel good from the inside out, right? Because I don't ever want to make anybody feel like they're nobody. Because I once felt that in my life where, I came to the country and I really didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. Because there was no way that I could actually see myself, being in that environment. Because coming all the way from Haiti, being so free, it was like, yo, this is different. And coming here, it was just like, okay, this is another way for me to actually grow. So my biggest shift, I would say, in my life happened in 2020, where, COVID happened. I know a lot of things didn't go, to the right way for a lot of people as well too. But I would say that's where I learned the most. Because for once, the world actually slowed down. My world slowed down as well too. And I had to learn, I had to grow, I had to figure out a way for me to be different. I had a vision for the first time. I could think again. And that thinking allowed me to say, you know what, Watson, like, let's go. Let's go. And today, I'm the man that I am today. I'm standing in front of you guys, sharing my story with you guys, letting you know that if a guy from Haiti, coming all the way from a village, I don't even know what address I came from in Haiti, but I'm still here with you guys. Some way, somehow, God paved the way, and each and every single person in history paved the way for me to be here today. And I am thankful and grateful for everybody. So, I would like to introduce Mr. Levante. He's actually getting his bachelor's right now. He's at Mitchell College. The man is definitely humble. He's been through it as well too, and he's just looking to share some wisdom with you guys. He's looking to grow, and Mr. Levante, take it over.
All right. Good evening. As you already know, my name is Levante Morel. I was born and raised up here in Connecticut, New London. My family moved up here from Memphis, Tennessee. And the one thing that I'm very grateful for is just the many teachings that my grandfather has taught me, and he is still telling me to this day of just the smaller things in life of how he went through and how things were back there for him. And I always try to take those teachings in my everyday life as well. I am also a very I'm a God person. I believe in the Christian faith, and I try to follow in the steps of Jesus Christ himself. As when he came down and was telling us the teachings of the Holy Father, he looked at all of us as one and the same. He didn't look at you differently. He didn't despise you. He healed everyone and gave everyone the same respect that I'm hoping to do in my everyday and as I go through my own life and experiences as well. Now, as much as I may have not experienced as much prejudice and discrimination as others, I still feel that weight on my shoulders as every day as I wake up. Me just walking, as every day I walk to school, or walking to work, or walking in, and just everyday interactions, I always try to put my best foot forward, but I still feel that weight as one day I might run into the one person who could do me wrong. But I always try to put my best foot forward. As even now, I still see the same kind of discrimination that our ancestors and stuff went through, that I'm seeing now today, and it's repeating. It may not be based on race; it could just be based on your sexuality or religion. And I'm always looking to just be that person that anyone could come to and just be yourself, be open. I don't want you to try to hide your true self from me. I want you to be able to tell me, yes, I'm going through this, and I want to just vent to you. I may have not went through it myself, but I can always be that person that can just be that ear and maybe spread the word out to somebody who could help you. Just like my great grandmother did for her community back down Memphis, as my family down there runs a pretty good church, and she used to help the people on our neighborhood who were like a little less fortunate. They didn't have enough food, maybe didn't have a place to sleep, or just were looking for just some extra help, and she would be that person that they could go to. And I always try to go through. Always try to forgive the ones that tend to be a little bit arrogant in their life and not truly understand what it means to just wake up and always have that fear of you can't even trust your own police department who is there to protect you in your community. I always try to, show forgiveness, because I can show forgiveness to them as much as it might be hard for me to forgive myself for some things that I might say in my everyday life. I always been a person who's not as open-minded, but I went through all my own teachings and went through my own and learned about the great figures in our life. And I just hope to be that same person nowadays to keep paving the way for the next generation as well. Thank you.
Forgiveness, generational trauma, the loss of a loved one, death, struggles, internal struggles. In 1925, Langston Hughes wrote a poem titled, I Too, Sing America. He said, I too sing America. I am the darker brother. They send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh, ha ha ha, eat well and grow strong. Tomorrow, I'll sit at the dinner table when company comes. Nobody dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too sing America. You heard from two extraordinary men. Thank you. Two extraordinary men. Different perspectives on their lives. And I want to thank you very much, Watson. And thank you, Levante, for sharing. Because black men are not a monolithic group. You saw that already based off of two perspectives. And when we shed a little bit of light later on, we also going to see, based off our 5 panelists today, that we're going to go through about 4 or 5 questions. And in those 4 or 5 questions, you'll get different insight based off of this incredible book, Don't Cry for Me, by Daniel Black. I want to also highlight inventions, because this is the last day. Tomorrow's the last day we celebrate Black History, but Black History is 365 days throughout the year. These are inventions by African Americans in this country. The light bulb, which is the filament within the light bulb. It's fireproof, fireproof safe, the Super Soaker, video game console, 3D film graphics, blood bank, elevator design, pacemaker control unit, the railway telegraph, air conditioning unit, the cell phone, 300 plus products, George Washington Carver, potato chips, the traffic light, Garrett Morgan, the mop, the guitar, the mailbox, the lawnmower, the almanac, fire extinguisher, TV remote control. People making a lot of comments, but they don't realize who invented the TV remote control. Okay? Bicycle frame, refrigeration, golf tee. I thought black people didn't play golf. They invented golf tee. All right? Portable pencil sharpener, dry cleaning. These are just a few. One of the reasons why I'm acknowledging this as well in this space, because a lot of these inventions were during the 1800s, the early 20th century, that they were invented. And in this book, we're shedding light on also that particular time period, what was going on, even with all the struggles they were dealing with, they still were contributing to this nation that may not have always accepted them. Okay? Music, contributions in music, gospel. When I say the music, you just say black music. Okay, gospel. Black music. Rhythm and blues. Black music. Rap, which means rhythm American poetry. Black music. Rock and roll. Black music. Pop. Black music. Jazz. Black music. Ragtime. Black music. Blues. Black music. Folk. Black music. Bebop. Black music. Right? So when we look at all these different contributions, see tonight, what's really interesting is that, like I'll take this gentleman here. What's your last name, sir? Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds. Now, Mr. Reynolds and I, physically, we look different, right? Okay? The physiology, you know, Mr. Reynolds, like, my skin is not going to ruffle your skin, you know. I know, we got to roll this, right? So, but on a serious note, we are 99.9% the same. Geneticists, it has been proven. What we're discussing here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is that 0.1%. That's what started all this discrimination. 0.1%. It's been proven. 99.9% the same, but we're discussing what? 0.1%, which divides us and separates us. Okay? So as we go deeper into this discussion tonight, breaking generational what? Silence. Looking at the trauma that black men have continued to endure even now in the 21st century. So I'm going to bring my panelists up. If you guys can come on up. Mr. Marvin Espy, Ms. Dr. Duval Prince, Mr. James Hodge, just give him a round of applause. Mr. Lee Matwire, and Mr. Rod Coleman. I want to thank them so much for taking time out of their schedules to be here to shed a little bit of light on this incredible book, Don't Cry for Me, by Dr. Daniel Black. Okay? So I'm going to start with you, Mr. Espy. If each one of you can share your name, what do you do outside of here, and why are you here tonight? Briefly. Okay?
Thank you all for being here. My name is Marvin Espy. I work as a fine artist, and I own an art gallery in New London on State Street. Very beautiful gallery, I might add. But you know, I'm here now because this is a critical time, not just for black people. This is a critical time for all people everywhere. And I was for a while saying in America, but the implications of what are happening now is beyond me being black. It's beyond our differences culturally. It's about what kind of a world do we want to be a part of. I don't believe that for a while I was looking for where I could go just to live a quiet life. And I don't believe there is a place. But if there was, I don't know that I'd be at peace living a quiet life knowing that there would be so much suffering going on. So I'm here because there need to be these conversations so that they lead to action urgently.
All right. Awesome. Dr. Prince?
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good. I appreciate people speaking back to me. My name is Dr. Duval Prince. I am originally from the Caribbean, so I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands. Kind of thing that's unique about me is though I am from the U.S. Virgin Islands, my father is British. My mother was French, and my abuelita, she's Latina. She's from the Dominican Republic. So I tend to see things interestingly different. I've transitioned here to warm Connecticut from the Caribbean. I've been here for the past 10 years, where I serve at Mitchell College as both CIO and Director of Information Technology. So it's been about 25 years total that I've been in higher education. It's something that I'm definitely passionate about. And overall, one of the biggest things for me is understanding that change may not always happen in your generation, but it does not make you less of a change agent. One of the things I love to say is there is comfort in complacency, but there is no growth. It's easy to stay still, stay quiet when things are comfortable, but you can't grow. Ships stay in the harbor, but that's not what they were built for. It's one of those things that we have to move. You're not gonna always impact a change that you're going to see right now, but it doesn't make that change any less impactful. For me, being here is just about not just sharing my story, but sharing the stories of my fellow panelists, and also seeing the different changes of people that's in the audience. Sometimes you really don't know what is going to happen until you're in the space. And also sometimes you, like Mr. Booker, you're able to make the space for other people to be heard. It's not always about your voice, but that of the next generation. Those are of the people that may not be able to be as articulate or may not be able to say the things that they think they want to say in a space that they want to say it. So.
Mr. James Hodge.
Good evening, everyone. I'm James Hodge, owner of Hodge Wellness. I do personal training, massage therapy, and I'm a licensed community health worker for the state of Connecticut. I do all these things because I have always just been a servant. It's the most comfortable thing ever. As a man of God, it's just the easiest thing ever to serve a big boss that has just unlimited resources. So I come to you to just share, to be a part of the community, and that's my thing. Like, the first tool I'll always give to any crowd is just to say, breathe, right? You're always going to breathe, and you're going to notice that breath, whether you're upset, you're breathing really fast. When you sleep, it's a slow thing. And if we do breathing mindfully, we can affect some changes. So, with these beautiful brothers up here, I hope we can accomplish just that.
Wow. Thank you, Mr. Booker, for that.
Thanks for
I know you got real quiet.
Because I'm waiting for you.
You want an invite.
Lee Matwire. The youngest on the panel.
You got this, Lee.
Yes, I'm Lee Matwire.
Tell people who you are.
Something unique about me is that I'm originally from Louisiana, and my family is Creole. So, yeah, I'm sort of a fish out of water up here. But I work as an analytical chemist with one of the pharmaceutical companies up here. And I say I'm here tonight just to share at least part of my experience, my story, as a part of a wider conversation that needs to be had, even continued on. Because just as the other gentlemen have said up here, that we've gone complacent, and there's no growth. There's nothing that's happening for all of us to move forward. So I'm here tonight just to have these conversations and just continue to moving forward.
Thank you. Mr. Rod Coleman.
Good evening. I want to thank the Groton Library and Mr. Booker for asking me to be here tonight. My name's Roderick Coleman. I've been living here for off and on for about 54 years. Just told my age probably, right? And I was a product of a military family where we moved all over the country. So I was able to deal with different cultures, different people of color. And that worked for me to explore other people's background. It put me to the advantage to be able to help and talk to other people. But at the other side of it, I didn't understand why people look down on other people because of just the color of their skin without even getting to know them. I went to 7 different high schools. I went to Barrington College, took some classes at UConn. I took a job with the state of Connecticut, operating the Mystic River Drawbridge. I did that job for 34 years. I just recently retired. I wrote a book. I started dabbling a little hobby. I wrote a children's book on the drawbridge.
Mr. Coleman, can you show your book, please?
Okay. It's titled Reach for the Sky, Mystic River, Wonderful Drawbridge. It's for sale at the Mystic bookstore now. I'm working on another one, a more animated one, primarily for kids, and it will have lots of people of color. Everyone will be part of that book. I want everybody to feel that they belong, and that's my goal. My goal here tonight is to learn. These guys, these some sharp guys, and that's my primary goal, is to learn the knowledge that they have, and maybe I could use some of that knowledge in my next book, and I can help out some younger gentlemen that I'm trying to speak to.
To this awesome panel. Gentlemen, I just want to say it's a privilege and honor to be here tonight and to moderate this panel with you all. The first question goes to Mr. Marvin, Mr. Dr. Prince, and James. How can we redefine black masculinity in a way that allows for vulnerability, self-expression, and emotional depth? That's something that you see throughout the book, especially black masculinity. When you're looking at how it's talked about throughout the book, Don't Cry for Me. So I'm going to go to Marvin on this question first. How can we redefine black masculinity in a way that allows for vulnerability, self-expression, and emotional depth? What comes to your mind, Marvin?
Okay. I think 2 things briefly. I think masculinity through our African American lineage was one of subjugation of fathers. So I can only imagine that either landing here and then being separated from family, or separated on the other side of the pond, or being born here and knowing that you could be sold to another plantation owner, or that your children can summarily be taken, sold, traded, inherited. And I was thinking about what that means for a father. And if not, I don't mean just, I shouldn't say father, what that means for a parent. If I'm a slave on a plantation, how do I parent my young man to survive in a world where he at 5, 7, 12, 15 can be taken from me without any choice of mine, and then have him survive. And I think I'm only speculating that part of that would be that from the time he's born, I've got to make him independent. And I have to say, from my personal experience, while my parents were married when my sister and I were born, I don't know much about their relationship, my mother and father's relationship in that time, but they were divorced by the time I was 2. But I had a relationship with my father. But it was not, it was a very independent, take care of yourself relationship. No help with college, no appearances at ball games, not much by way of instruction, teaching. And I, of course, as a young man and into my adulthood, I had a lot of resentment about that. In hindsight, I imagine he got something dramatically less than what I got. So he may have given me what he knew to give me intentionally, or he may not have known what to give me, but I imagine that our lineage would provide for a father to give their sons a detached independence, and probably for self-preservation too. I still got to live with this master that I'm with, and I still got to go out and do this work. And if I break down and fall apart when they take my family member, then I'm not going to survive, and neither are they. So that's one speculation.
Thank you, Mark.
I had 2, but I don't remember the other one.
Thank you. So going to Dr. Prince, how do you redefine black masculinity in a way that allows for vulnerability, self-expression, and emotional depth?
So for me, I think I go back to my parents, right? And I mix a little bit of that with what happens now. When you talk to any younger person, one of their big catchphrases is "life be lifing," and it sounds weird, but you sometimes cannot find a better way to define life and what's happening now than simply saying it is what it is. Like, life just simply be lifing. And a lot of times we define masculinity as we've observed it. So we, as parents, you parent the way that you probably was parented. And then your parents got parent, or they learned to parent the way how they were parented as well. And sometimes as one generation turns to the next, they often pass on the blessing, but not necessarily the lesson. So you get the benefit of what happened, but you don't know why you got that benefit. So we now get to the space where we almost feel that it's obligatory. So we have to have this just because we exist, and there is no effort that needs to be put into it. But trust me, life is hard. It is hard. If you do it right, it's hard, and there's not always a retrieval for it. Sometimes there is not a downhill, there is just always uphill both ways, and it feels like that sometimes, but that's what it is. And then as you try to navigate it in the space of masculinity, one of the things that you're always taught is to be prepared. You never know what's going to happen, so always be prepared. And sometimes with that level of preparation, it comes this facade of I have to turn off everything in me that's emotional. I cannot show any sign of weakness, because if I do that, that then makes me vulnerable to everything else that happens. So as men, sometimes we don't, and I do it a lot, so I'm preaching to myself when I'm saying it to you, because we don't have an emotional filter. That's not how I think we are made. James may say something differently, but to fix that, we turn off everything. So the effect that I have with one situation is the same effect that I have with the next situation. I deal with losing a job the same way I deal with losing a friend. I shut it all off. That's how we process things. And one of the superpowers that a man has is to think about absolutely nothing. It's a superpower, I promise you. When we sit when we sit in silence and you say what you're thinking about, the answer is absolutely nothing. And we are proficient at it. It's a space that I think we've lived and set up houses and bridges, and that's how we are. Right? And then I'll give you this one other thing before I move on. Well, two things. As I look at how we process things, I process things in three different ways. I process things, first of all, as 70-20-10. 70% of the time, I process things based on what is. This is just the cards that I'm dealt, and this is how I'm going to play. 20% of the times, I focus on what if. That possibility of what's a potential of something happening. And 10% of the time, I focus on what's next. Within that 20 and that 10% of the time, that's 30%. And I don't know if y'all been in school long enough, but 70 is still a passing. So that 70% of the time I focus on, this is my day-to-day life. This is just what it is. And I have to process things that way. And that's kind of how we function. We want to be proactive, but the way how sometimes life comes at you, you have to be reactive. And that's sometimes a space that we have to live in most of all, you know? And as men, we are trained inherently to be protectors. We are fixers. So don't tell us a problem just for us to listen. That's not how we're built. That's not how we're built. We're built to fix the problem. So we hear you say, and we say, what's wrong? And you say nothing. That's what we believe. There's no, let me ask you again. That's how we are. So understanding all of those pieces as we look at ourselves being men and what we define it as masculinity, is taking all bits and pieces of this thing, being prepared for that next step, understanding who we are currently, filtering out the things that in life that we don't have any control of. And that's just how we have to process in this world that we live in.
So, James, James, what is your perspective on black masculinity in regards to vulnerability, self-expression, and emotional depth?
To redefine black masculinity, first you have to separate it from sexuality. Because being a man is like, I'm just going to be very scientific and say X and Y and XX. So once you get to that point, it's just your actions. It's owning your truth. It's who you are. So the vulnerability is, can you be truthful to yourself? Can you love yourself to tell the truth about how you feel? Self-expression follows that, right? Because if I can be truthful with myself, I don't have a problem with anybody else because I'm already truthful with myself. And then the emotional depth is there. Because if I'm upset with you, I'm going to tell you I'm upset. If I'm not, I'm going to tell you I'm not. But I tend to think when we redefine masculinity, it has to be on the basis of what did you say and what did you do. I'm judging you on your actions. And at the point in time you change those actions, you change. And each of us gets to define for ourselves what we want to define these things as. But for that masculinity part, yeah, like I define a man, that masculine part, as you doing what you said you would do. And if you can't, you said that you couldn't and you had a good reason why. But that's where I would leave it at. Just having your word and that be your pride.
Right, absolutely. So this next question is directed to Rod and Lee. And in regards to masculinity, what messages about masculinity do black men receive from their families, communities, and media? Because we see a lot of different images, we hear a lot of things from our family members, community, and how do these messages impact their emotional well-being? Right.
Excuse me. Well, I think it's kind of tough because I came from two parents that were conservative and really tough conservatives. And you were trained to be tough all the time, no matter what the circumstances were. You couldn't show weakness. You couldn't cry. You had to get up, get going. I remember when I first became diabetic, I came home, I sat at my parents' kitchen table. What did the doctor say? He says, I'm diabetic. And I looked at both of them, and I started to cry, because I thought, death sentence. My mother said, it's okay to cry, go ahead and cry. Then I turned and looked at my father, and he said, diabetic, so what? What are you crying for? Get yourself together, get back on the horse and get going. So I was trained to not to really show emotions. Because even like today, I'll tell it. If I'm really emotional, I'm not married, but I can still get in my car and go to a park or something, do my crying there. You know, I don't want anybody to see my weakness. I didn't want my younger brothers to see my weakness. I didn't want my sisters to see my weakness, because I was looked upon as the strong person in the family. So I trained myself not to show it. I trained myself not to show it at work. And to carry myself a certain way with the media. To train myself not to let them see that weakness. I always had to come off looking strong, and that's not good. There should be somebody you can go talk to, be a professional, or your parents. That's a lot of weight to carry, especially for the kids today. I tell the kids today, if you got a problem, you can come talk to me. You know, because I didn't like that feeling, you know. But then my parents grew up in that era where it was really tough for them. And you can't be weak. And as the old saying, for a black man, you gotta be twice as good. So I had to come off strong and even act strong when I wasn't. And I think that's not good for anybody, male, female, black or white. I think you should, if I had kids today, I'd tell them totally different. You can talk to me. Let's talk about it. Let's go get you some help if I have to. In the black community, having such a long past of being kicked around, degraded, I think we're put in a position where you had to always be strong or act like you were strong. You couldn't show a weakness. I think today it's better because you have more outlets now. People speaking on the subject, you see it on the infomercials, TV. I have a couple of siblings that see therapists. In the yesteryear, that wasn't thought of. You had to, the old saying is, pick up your bootstraps and get going. But you carry that. You don't realize that you carry that. And you can carry it into a relationship, and before you know it, you don't know what happened. So I think in today's era, as a black man, to teach the younger kids today, if you have a problem, if you want to talk about something, let's talk about it.
Thank you. And that sheds light on some of the themes throughout the book, with the generational trauma, things that happen, you know, when you look at even how the father's role in the book and the son's role in the book as well. And I just want to go through a couple of things that you mentioned when you were sharing just now. You said, I train myself not to show it. It is a lot of weight to carry. I didn't want nobody to see my weaknesses. I didn't want anyone to see my weaknesses. So Lee, directing this question back to you, what messages about masculinity do black men receive in and their families based on your perspective, being born in Louisiana, in a deeper part of the South, families, communities, and media? And how do these messages impact their emotional well-being based off of your perspective?
Well, talking about with families and everything, well, my parents were a little more open. They were still conservative, in a way to where like I could still go talk to them about how I'm feeling, but at the same time, it's like they don't want anything to be out of the house.
Say that again. They don't want.
They didn't want anything to be out of the house, which means if you were feeling something outside the house, you come back and you tell them in the house. You don't let it out.
Thank you.
Basically, don't let it get out of the house. Don't let other family members know. Don't let anyone know. No, because even though it was a community, you don't let anyone know your business. That's basically all it was. You don't let anyone know your business. And the fact is, as mostly the male's role, I was mostly taught to just push things down for most of the way, because I also had the added pressure of being not only the oldest of my siblings, but also really the oldest out of like basically my generation between my cousins and me. So I had to be that rock, that emotional rock, to where I had to take on things that when they ever come to vent to me. And going back out into community, like there's also different. There's also like you have to be more emotionally stable in the community, because like you just act up just one time, and it gets back. Yeah, it's game over. And that's just with anything, especially also with the media, because like everybody's seen the media today. Every time there's like a black person that's on the news, is for something like kidnapping or murder or something, but there's never really anything about when a black child goes missing, or why if someone ran away. That's just stuff that just doesn't get talked about. So it's like that goes back to the family dynamics with black families, that you basically keep it in the house. And so with the community, going back to community again, with the whole emotional well-being, is that you're taught to be strong outside, and just think the same sentiment is don't let them know your weakness. Which, I mean, there are times when you just have those hard days, and you just want to just go in your room and just cry. I mean, that's typically what happens. But I think it has gotten better, over the last few years, especially how with like there's even more people just having these discussions about just being open, just being more emotional about it, and just talking about your feelings, because that's just something that just wasn't really there when I was a kid, and especially also when like you go out as well, because like there's also the added factor of parents' reputation, especially with black families. And the fact is, I was a teacher's kid, so I had the extra layer of having to be good, or otherwise teachers be able to call, just email my mom, and they're like, that's all three of my lives right there.
Oh boy.
So going back to what Lee just said, he said, don't let anyone know your what? Business. He said, don't let them know your what? Your weakness. I was taught to suppress my what? My thoughts. So when I think about suppressing thoughts, and sometimes we hear in conversations, you need to man up. You need to man up. You need to get it together, boy. And throughout the book, Don't Cry for Me, Dr. Daniel Black talked about that throughout the book, about what he heard from his father throughout the book, and how that plays such a role on him as a man later on. So my next question is directed to James, Marvin, and Rod. when we talk about manning up, have you ever experienced or witnessed being told to man up? And how did that moment affect you in the long run? James, I see you looking ready right now. You look ready like you had.
Because I'll tell somebody to rub some dirt in it real quick. I'm going to be I'm listening to people, and I see that I'm probably the bully at the table. Yeah, but it's a total mind trip, guys. And when they tell you to man up, or somebody's saying that, there's something going on. And I'll just explain it to the point of, all right, let's say bills have to be paid. Now, I felt his father, because when he said, oh, it's just diabetes, I know people, look, I know people all over this neighborhood right now got diabetes, won't even go to the hospital, won't get medication. I know them. And this is your complaint? Get to work. And that coldness right there is, I understand you have a problem, and I really would love to concentrate on your problem, but you gotta get a roof over your head and clothes on the kid's back, food on the table. One of these things is gonna outweigh the other. So we can sit here and have this great conversation about this. You get to work. You see how hard that is? You tell somebody to rub some dirt in it? That's not nice. I just think there's a part of life where, man, there's a hard edge. I'm retired military, I'm sorry. Like, there's just a hard edge to it that comes out sometimes, and it just is what it is.
Take it away.
I know, Dr. Prince. He pointed right at you.
Yo, life be lifing, man. but that's not my question. So I'll deflect to the other brothers on the panel.
Who's up?
That wasn't my question, but I could jump in, but it's not my question.
Oh, he asked it, but I'm finished. Like,
Okay.
I feel like just manning up, like, it's very situational.
Yeah.
It is
what it is.
very
Yeah.
situational.
So Marvin,
I got something.
yeah, have you ever experienced or witnessed?
So, all this relates to American masculinity. And while I think that man up mentality, we have it in the black community, but I think it's an American thing. Many of us did not have parenting. I mean, my ancestors perhaps didn't have as much parenting from their own father, and we haven't learned. Like, if you're an Italian American or Irish American, you may have learned parenting styles from generations of parents that you can identify. I think a lot of us learned about parenting and masculinity the way maybe white culture learned about black culture through media and TV. I'm 60. I grew up watching John Wayne and Dirty Harry and Charlie Bronson and all of those ultra macho figures that would bend a woman over and smack her in the butt and say, or slap her, calm down. And so that man up to me, I have a different, I was the crybaby in the family. And I was called the crybaby. And I was, in fact, a kid who cried a lot because I felt a lot. What I've learned, though, is that have the feeling, now go get the job done. So cry, get a good cry, or cry as you move along. And I'll say this last thing. When my little girl, I only have one kid, but when my little girl played soccer and she fell and scratched her knee, she'd look over to see my reaction, and she's crying. I say, cry and run. Cry and run. Right. You can still get the job done. Cry, but get back to the ball. And so my thing is, I'm gonna feel stuff along the way, but I still got stuff to do. and I may take some time out. It's cleansing for me. By the time I get a good cry out, now I'm ready to fight. You ready? Okay, I got my cry out, and I like him. I might have to do it in private, right? Keep your business at home, but yeah.
I like what you just said, Marvin. You said cry and run. Cry and run.
I don't mean
Yep.
run away crying.
I know, right? but
Cry and do the work.
it was a good point. And that leads me to the next question on forgiveness. Because the reality is, as men, and as black men dealing with, the trauma, the generational trauma, we look at our fathers, things that have been passed down from one generation to the next generation. And as we get older, later on in life, we have to deal with, are we going to forgive or are we going to harbor all that negative energy? Kind of like what Dr. Daniel Black also alluded to in his book as well, writing that letter back to his father. So my next question goes to Rod and Dr. Prince in regards to forgiveness. What does true forgiveness really look like, especially when someone is seeking it later on in life?
Well,
Right.
I think it's, for me, it came through being a Christian. My father that was in the military was my stepfather, but he was the only one I knew as my father. My maternal father, I didn't develop a relationship probably till after college. And I heard about some of the things he did, coming home and the lights would be off in Philadelphia. What's going on? No food in the cabinets. He was taking the money and going gambling. And when I got older, he called me at home and asked to speak to me. And I said, when I see you, I'm going to kick your teeth in.
Jeez. Say that one more time, please.
I said, when I see you, I'm going to kick your teeth in.
When I see you, I'm going to kick your what?
Teeth.
Teeth out.
Hmm. My mother heard that. And after I hung up the phone, she said, listen, the Bible says, honor your parent. It didn't say you had to love them, but honor them, for your days will be long. So I thought about it and I prayed about it. And I called him later on, a few days later, and I said to him, the next time I see you, I'm going to pray with you. So I told him, the next time I see you, I'm going to pray with you. And I met him again. He came up here to go play golf at the Measure-Tucket Golf Course. I guess it was a yearly thing. I didn't know about that. And he says, my bus gets off at the hotel if you'll meet me there. So I saw him. He came over with a set of golf clubs. I said, you going golfing? He said, no, these are for you, but I'm going golfing, but these are for you. And I said, oh, I appreciate that. And I prayed with him, standing right there. So through being a Christian, that helped me to forgive. Because I even think through slavery, the slave masters, we have to learn to forgive. And it's hard, but we have to. That doesn't mean that you don't protest it. That means that you don't speak about it, educate about it. But you have to learn to forgive. Because if you don't forgive, you're going to carry it around with you forever.
Wow.
So that taught me to learn to forgive. You know, you can't carry things around with you forever.
You can't carry things around with you for what? Forever. So, Dr. Prince, what does true forgiveness mean to you? And thank you.
That's a loaded question. I almost think that I need to like stand and walk for this particular piece, but I'm gonna stay seated. I think sometimes when we say forgiveness, it's a quick fix to things, right? I look at it as a dyadic experience, if you will. There's forgiveness and then there's restoration. Forgiveness is what I do for me. But everyone that I forgive, I don't restore. Get that one more time, because that didn't bless you quite right. Forgiveness is something I do for me. But not everyone that I forgive, I restore. Because sometimes the thing that happens, you do not want to put a person in that space to do that to you again. But you also don't want to remain in that same headspace of the thing that happened to you. So you forgive, right? Because that's for you. But you don't often, for me, and just this is me, not every time that forgiveness happens, restoration happens at the same time. I can forgive you and not mess with you anymore. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes we think that because you've forgiven a person, that they have to now occupy the same space in your life that they did before. You don't have to do that. That's a different form of restoration. I can forgive you, so I'm no longer in that same headspace. So every time I see you coming around, my whole mood isn't changed. Every time I see a vehicle that looked like the one that you drove, my whole day isn't affected. Every time I see someone comes in and they wear the same cologne or perfume that you used to wear, my whole day isn't thrown off. So that's forgiveness. That's for me. But restoration is kind of what that person happened, because sometimes with forgiveness, what then happens is a person or a situation can happen publicly, and the atrocity happens publicly, but the apology happens privately. I'm gonna give that again, because that didn't bless you quite right again. See, the thing can happen publicly, but the apology happens privately. And you're like, you did something to me in front of everybody. Things that happened to me happened in front of everybody. But you don't come back in the same space with everybody to apologize. You want to take me to the side and say, hey, you know, and this is how these apologies go. I'm sorry that you felt. I'm going to give that one more time, because again, that didn't bless you quite right. I'm sorry that you felt that this thing. Not that I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry that the action that I did made you, I'm sorry that you felt some way because of the action that I did. Not that I did something wrong, right? So in that same space, you can forgive, because I no longer want to be in that same headspace. But restoration doesn't always have to happen the same way. And a lot of times with that, it comes this generational trauma, if you will, because, so I'm Caribbean, right? And it may be a black thing as well. There's some things that you would have heard your parents say. My Haitian brother will get this part. I don't quite, when I say it, you're gonna understand it. Giselle gets this too, and Lee. Lee gonna get on, I'll explain it to you why. There's some parents that, or some older folks that will not have you speak to another person. You have no idea why. And the reason they would say something like, my spirit just don't take them. And that makes no sense unless you've had, you see what I'm saying? Like, you have no idea what that means, and they'll be like, my spirit just don't take them. And no, you know what I'm saying? It just doesn't, no me cae me bien. Like, it doesn't, you sound like it doesn't quite fit. It don't fit right on you. And a lot of times this same feeling is something that happened, especially in small communities. There has been something that happened 3 generations ago. And there was no forgiveness that happened there. Hence no restoration. And then as a result, that trauma got passed from one generation to the next. From that generation to the next. And now you have kids growing up being impacted by something that happened 3 generations ago. that have no idea why. So that same thing, just like how diseases can be hereditary, so can hate, so can malice, so can trauma. It passes from one generation to the next. And the last thing I'd say about this is understanding some cultural fears. One of the things that wasn't on Mr. Booker's 25 questions was was one of the things that happened, and again, this is just me talking to or getting buy-in from some of my colleagues. Again, you definitely get this. Almost everybody here gets this. Traditionally, as black people, we do not trust medical professionals. It is not a thing that we do. And this is even pre-syphilis things that happen. We just don't trust it. And that's one. And two, coming from the Caribbean, or from my story, we also couldn't afford it. So one of the first things that we do is when someone gets sick is you find some tea. Yeah, you find some tea, or Hule Masque tea. You know how that works. That works for everything. That works for every single thing. So oftentimes, we don't have that trust in medical professionals. It's just not what we do. So it doesn't matter how strong the advice is, and it doesn't matter how we can have people in our families who's physicians. I've been practicing for years. And before your grandmother or your abuela goes to the doctor, they're gonna say, I'm made of bebote. Like, they want tea first. Like, let me get this first before I go to seek any medical, because we're just not trusting of those things, because we see them all as systems. We see them all as systems, and as long as we didn't have some part of it, it's part of that trauma that happened from one generation to the next. So I would say that the big piece of me is there is forgiveness and then there's restoration. The two things are not the same. You forgive for yourself, but you choose who you restore.
So Dr. Prince just said you forgive for who? Yourself. But you choose to what? Restore. And all of us deal with trauma, especially when we look at relationships, right? Relationships with a father, sometimes your mom, whatever the situation is. But looking at Dr. Daniel Black's book, Don't Cry for Me, it's his relationship with his father. And this next question will go directly to Marvin and Lee. And regards to when you're looking at that father and son relationship, how do you think the relationship between black fathers and their sons has changed over time, from one generation to the next? Because I know you, Marvin, you know, as you said before within our panel tonight, I'm 60 years old. And looking at your father and the relationship you have with your dad, how have things changed through the generations from what you have observed in this time that you have been on this planet?
I think for me, as a black father, I'm seeing it across fatherhood in America in general. I think, at least in the circles where I am, that I see fathers being affectionate with their sons and daughters. I see it way more now than I ever saw it with any father on TV, in the neighborhood, or anywhere. Nothing gives me more joy than to see an older black man embrace or kiss his adult son, and to see a father embrace or kiss on the forehead his son, or just be affectionate. I would give cash money. I would get Musk kind of money. That's a better use. That's a better use for it. But no, I'm believing that the kind of toxic masculinity that we experienced in the years when I was young, I think is flipped, and in some ways it's gone really, really far. But I think it'll land somewhere, hopefully in the middle, where we young men can be young men, but that doesn't mean that they can't be affectionate. That doesn't mean that boys can't be affectionate with their friends. I grew up on the wrestling team, and you don't get any closer to dudes than when you're wrestling, but when the match is over, I mean, we're physical, and then you become an adult, and I don't have physicality with adult men anymore. And I don't mean in a sexual way. I just mean that aside from a two-dap hug, right? We did you got to give them, you don't do that? Don't start rubbing me on the back. I ain't down with that. No, I ain't down with that. But, and if you are, that's cool. But I think that I appreciate seeing fathers and sons talking and relating and communicating and teaching. And if a kid falls down on the basketball court, he's getting a little bit more now than just man up. He's getting. What are you feeling? All right. Well, we'll talk about that later. Let's get back out there. You know. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. So Lee, you know, the question directed to you as well in regards to your relationship, you know, with your father, and do you think things have changed over time based on what you have observed when your father with his father and your grandfather, and how is your relationship been with your dad?
I say things definitely have changed over time because my grandfather was in the military, and so that's they didn't move around a lot. But wherever my grandfather had to go to Fort Polk, and he was sending my dad and my uncle to go to an aunt. I forget which aunt, where at. That thing like that was a little bit there of an absentee right there. Then also like my dad also had to grow up real quick because by the time my dad got to college, and while in college, that's when my grandparents got a divorce. And so he had to drop out of college because there's the trauma for that. And that's thing, he didn't even go back till, he just got his bachelor's degree a few years ago.
That's good.
Congratulations.
But I see it today with me that like, well, not just me, but all my siblings, that he encourages all of us, especially when we go out and do stuff. I mean, he's always there when for a lot of our sporting stuff, and that's thing. He's usually one that travels with us for all of our sporting stuff. Because when I was younger, I did a lot of Taekwondo tournaments, and usually it would just be me and my dad. It'd just be, just two of us that would go on the trip. That would go while I compete. Especially if if it wasn't a Texas one where the whole family was able to come, and then that would just be time for us to bond everything, then come back. And then I see it also with my brother, especially with also in the last few years since my mom had passed and it was my brother's senior year in high school, and that my dad had to step up and do more of the educational, come back in and do a lot of the education stuff because my mom handled more of that. And I see that, and like I basically almost talk to my dad just about almost every day, just to check in on him, just to see. And like that's something that like that's never really been done with my grandfather and him a whole lot of time, because they only talk maybe like once every few weeks, but that kind of got somewhat more frequent when my grandfather was basically going through hospice. So I think like it really improved compared to before.
Thank you. And Lee, thank you so much for being vulnerable and opening it up. Thank you very much. Give him a round of applause. Okay. So in regards to, when we talk about like being a man, right? And this leads me to my last question before we do our closing statement here. Throughout the book, sexuality is a theme that's throughout the book. Okay, and I wasn't going to stay away from this question here. Okay, all right, because this is something that's a major theme throughout the book. And when I think about extraordinary black men in history, there are two black men that come to mind in regards to their sexuality, and they were always very open about about their sexuality. And that's James Baldwin, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century.
Yep.
And we also know Bayard Rustin, who was a great organizer during the civil rights movement. And he was also openly gay and open about his sexuality as well. And going back to what Marvin said earlier, and as we know, we always have that idea of what masculinity is, right? And we see that throughout within our community. You know, don't get too close to me, dude. You know, hey, how you doing? Okay? I don't have the physicality, you know, like, yeah, we're going to just not too close, but I don't want to show too much. You know, being a man. So my question for any one of you on the panel, okay, why do you think homosexuality is such a taboo phenomenon or concept, right, within our community and still is to this day? It's something like, as J.L. King wrote a book a few years ago, The Brothers on the Down Low, right? And it's something that we know exists within our community. And Dr. Daniel Black also, you know, expanded on that as well and talked about that throughout his book. That's a theme throughout the book. You know, coming to terms with his sexuality and having that conversation with his father. So any one of you in regards to that, why do you think that is such a topic, a theme that we still deal with within our community today?
I think we'll continue to deal with it because it's tied to our spirituality. Like, there is a clear-cut definition, and you find it in the book. And you find it in the book where they start talking about it. So when I think about it, I understand that all of a sudden we have to have these conversations. And you have to all of a sudden start saying, okay, how does this work for you in this space, and in this space, and in this space? And then how do you continue to talk to people? And for me, it has been a interesting thing, because I was stationed in Oakland right when they started the votes for marriage for everyone. And literally, my thought was, because of my relationship with God, that's not for me. How I grew up, it was, you better not. And you could see those lines, and people hide certain things. But to solve the problem, I think you have to let everyone be themselves. I have to let you be you, you have to let me be me, and I have to understand that whatever you do, that's what you do. And then I have to judge you. Once again, I'm gonna go by the actions of what I feel should happen. And that's just for me, but I can't then turn around and then judge you and say, oh, this is what's going on and it's wrong. Because I still have to have that conversation. There should never be anything that shuts down communication. And that's what it comes down to. Like, this is who you are, this is how you feel, whether you voted this way, that way, Democrat, like, it's the things that shut down communication. And you just got to get back to, once again, letting everybody be who they are and be their authentic self. Because those are the things that are hidden, like, oh, this is who you are, don't do that. And I think you've heard it, like, you gotta hide this, I feel this way, so I gotta hide this. Or this person is this way, so we don't talk about this out on the street. It's just gotta be a more open conversation.
Much more open conversation. Because when you think about same-sex marriage, it didn't become legal until 10 years ago, 2015. So, and even if you just take a look outside of even the black community, it's something that, you know, as a nation, we didn't really come to terms with and recognize completely until 2015. So is there anyone else who would like to, Marvin, please?
Yeah. So I think in the black community, I think most of our history about matters like that come through the Christian faith and what is in the scripture. That said, there's a lot of things in Scripture, but somewhere along the way, a different kind of shame has been attached to homosexuality or anything around gender and those kinds of things. And I know what I believe, and I know what the Scriptures say, but the Scriptures say a lot about a lot of things. And so, but I think in black communities, I think there a lot of men, probably women too, were on the quote-unquote down low because of the shame. And what's interesting, I remember as a kid, I knew who all the gay kids were anyway. I mean, they didn't have to say it. You just knew. So there was that, and then I think also, there's a different kind of shame in the general public around that I think is based in biblical teaching, but is skewed because the Scriptures say we should not be a slave to anything. So I remember hearing, you shouldn't smoke because it's addictive. Well, America is addicted to sugar. It's killing people way more than cigarettes ever did. Americans are addicted to online media. People are addicted to pornography. We don't put the same kind of shame around some of these other things that we put on that, and I think that goes to the kind of toxic masculinity that I don't want your gay to rub off on me. I don't want your feminine tendencies to rub off on my kid or to rub off. And I think when parents are being the parents that God designed them to be, nobody's gonna influence your kid to be this or be that. I don't think.
Well said, Marvin. Thank you. So in closing, gentlemen, if each one of you, just for 20 seconds, can share a statement or a quote in regards to something you would like to leave the audience tonight with. All right, I'll leave. Rod, start with you.
For myself, I hope that this world gets better. I hope the political arena, I hope it gets better. I hope the kids today read more books,
Wow.
get off the phone.
Yeah.
And I just think we ought to share more love than hate.
Yeah.
Just going back to that last statement, the homosexuality thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not my job to judge you.
That's right. That's right.
God said he's a judge.
That's right.
So I'll let him take care of that.
That's right.
We got enough stress. So I'll let
Well
him
said.
take care of it.
Thank you, Rod. Thank you. Lee Matwire.
I'll probably leave out with this. Wisdom is a circle. What you receive, you must give back. And so what we've done with the discussion tonight, and especially also what you have learned, teach it to others, as well as learn from others as well.
And Mr. Hodge.
I'll give you two things. Like the first one, it's just going to be when you're feeling down and out, just know right where you are enough. You are enough. You're right where God has you to be. That's my belief. And then second is just when you're feeling like you're just too high or someone thinks they're higher than you, just remember, memento mori. We're going to die. Enjoy life. It's a whole banquet. There's a whole lot of suckers out there starving themselves. Don't be one.
All right. All set. Dr. Duvall Prince.
I have like four things, clearly. One of the discussions we spoke about was the impact of fathers. And I think we have this space where fathers have so wanted to be the friends of their kids that they've forgotten how to be fathers of their kids. You need to be a father first before you could be the friend. We're dealing with a generation that's lost so much structure. As soon as something gets difficult, we're ready to stop. We've lost a lot of that grit. So I'd say that's one. We need fathers to be fathers first, and then be that friend after. Second one is fear should not lead to immobility. You're afraid of something, okay. There is someone that I met over the past couple months. He's a bit acerbic, but even in all of his speeches, one of the things he likes to say is, and so what? And so what? Okay, this happened to you. Okay, and so what? You gonna let that stop you from doing everything else that you need to do? Yeah, it happened. You gonna sit, exactly, cry and run.
Don't run and cry.
Don't run and cry. The next thing is, we've all heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. The problem is that we have a world that's filled with so much child men and child women that needs to be villaged themselves. It's almost an epidemic. You know what I'm saying? That's bars, I know. It's crazy. You know, when it's just a crazy world that we live in, and even if you don't have the kids, you still need to be that uncle. Still need to be that aunt. But we have this space where there is no village because everyone are grown children. And y'all need to fix that collectively. My last thing is, whatever legacy you think you want to leave, you need to start that journey now. It's always easy to think about the things that has happened and all that kind of wonderful stuff, but think about the legacy you want to leave. When your clock runs out and you've passed on, what legacy do you want to leave? Changes don't always happen in your generation, but it doesn't mean that you get to be complicit. You still need to impact some action.
Oh, well said. And Mr. Marvin Espy.
Never thought there'd be an occasion where I would quote Jane Fonda.
Come on now.
Oh my gosh.
I watched a portion of the SAG Awards, and she spoke beautifully.
Yeah.
And from, I think, in her 80s, I think.
Yeah.
The tripwire has already been tripped. And I think there's a short amount of time, a very finite amount of time, by which we have to stop the momentum of this bomb that's already, the trigger's already been pulled. And I fear that with a leadership that, and I know I'm going in places, but a leadership that is not playing by the rule book that we've been accustomed to, and who appears to be 6 to 8 years ahead of us planning-wise, we got to decide what kind of a world we want to live in and act yesterday. I fear that by the time, or I'll sum it up this way. In my lifetime, I've been in maybe 3 or 4 legitimate scuffles, fights. None since 1983. But I always feel prepared. And I think most guys, if you're like me, when I walk in the room, I kind of survey the land. And when I walk up to the cashier, and there's 4 guys there, in my mind, I'm kind of sizing up. It's not even a military thing. But I don't enjoy the idea of having to fight. I feel like I'm always prepared. And I would teach, don't get in a fight. The situation as we're in now, we are already in the fight.
Yeah.
The fight has already been started. It's in Ukraine. It's here on our territory. It's with immigrants in cages. It's with whatever's happening at Guantanamo Bay. It's DEI and slashes, and it's only a matter of time before you hear something outside your door, and it's troops. And I always feel like, well, 8 years ago, I wanted to sound the alarm, but I don't want to look crazy. No, that's just chill. You're exaggerating. But I think today, there is no exaggeration. We have a leadership now that has expressed verbally, boldly, brazenly, that I don't have to answer to the judicial system that runs the military. I don't have to be accountable to them. And we are already, the click, click, click that you hear as the roller coaster is going to that first hill, the click's already stopped. We're at the top of the hill, teetering, and it's only a matter of time. And I don't know what that means for us individually. Yes, I know it means prayer in my life, in my world. I know it means galvanizing relationships. I know it means strengthening my community. But the fight is all. I think we've already taken several blows, and we're still preparing. Well, where are my boxing gloves? So I think it's time to. Sorry, that wasn't encouraging.
Thank you, Mr. Marvasky. Thank you. So in closing, we're going to have a recap from Mr. Watson Joseph, who's been taking notes, just to kind of go through this conversation with us all within a minute. Okay? Let's give Mr. Watson Joseph a round of applause, everyone.
Yep. First of all, guys, thank you so much. Yeah, this was definitely a powerful panel for sure. I definitely learned so much from you guys, like so much wisdom in the room. And, you guys are definitely the pioneers to, the world that we have today. And, just hearing from you guys all, my thing is, I just wanted to, just recap the thing. And, what really stood out to me is fathers are more loving to their children than they ever were. And, that stuck out to me because I'm like, me and my father, we didn't really have the best relationship when I first came to America. But as time passed, as time kept going, we actually established a relationship where we do talk every day now. Like, he parented me, and, now it's time to be my friend now. Right? But he's still a father figure to me at the end of the day. I will always respect my father. I will always look at him as the man that, that's always been in my life personally. So that's something that, you guys, I appreciate it for sharing that for sure. Another thing that stood out to me was ships stay in the harbor, but that's not what it was made for. Wow. That was powerful. And that to me represents each and every single one of you here has a purpose. And each and every single one of you were built for a purpose. So don't take that for granted. Don't let your voice be silenced, but, inherit that and utilize the way that you were actually meant to be. Use that to your advantage, because that's what's going to make our world a better tomorrow, right? Because each and every single one of us, if we stay silent, nothing moves. But this is where we all have to come together. We all have to say, you know what? Instead of sitting around and letting things happen, let me make things happen. And this is where, you know, your point actually, you know, just listening to you at the end, I'm like, you know, like, although all this thing is happening, we still have to be the ones that have faith. We still have to go back and tap into that Martin Luther King Jr. power. We still have to go back and say, you know what, there is a lot of examples that's already happened. History repeats itself, but are we gonna allow history to fold us in this generation that we're in? And the answer to me is a no. We can't let this happen. So, you know, my thing to you guys is, be the change that you wanna see in the world, and let's continue to unite together.